Is Simple, with him sitting out and not playing, and Navi excelling and winning without him, wonderful, seems to be a very good fit on the team. Is Simple's legacy in question right now, especially considering him as the greatest of all time, which he definitely has been in the conversation along with Forrest and Get Right,
No,
which are my three are Forrest, Get Right, and Simple as the kind of Counter-Strike, not just Go. There is no other answer for the GOAT of CSGO. There's only one answer.
no,
It's
I
only
know.
Simple. Okay, Device maybe. Device and Nico, Device,
No,
Nico,
it's simple. I
Kojima,
don't
or
think
whatever
anybody.
are all like surrounding him. But you know, Device has the titles. I mean, the biggest knock on Simple is the lack of major championships and how long it took him
Yeah,
to win a major championship. Device has the rings, and I think Device is a solid answer.
yeah,
Maybe
no.
Simple isn't unanimous, but it's like I think it's
I
as
think he still
close
would
to
be.
unanimous as you can get to
Yeah, no,
me.
I do simplify. It does get simplified when you do that, but I just think it's also like it's when people get into it's a little bit harder, right? Like you're trying to kind of have the discussion like it's a traditional sport, and that's not like a bad thing, but you got to realize that this is different. We have different versions
No,
of
it's
the
not.
game.
No, it's not.
No,
It doesn't matter.
Jordan
It doesn't matter.
Jordan and LeBron are playing by the same rules. Okay, except minus some of the interesting refereeing.
See, that's what I'm talking about, because you add in Kareem, you add in Wilt,
No, I'm not
you're
talking about players.
no,
You
you're just including modern basketball. What I'm saying is, if you include people like Wilt, who played before there was a 3-point line, who played before there were even block shots
Yeah,
were
that's
counted in
okay.
stats, the basketball that was played in the 60s and 70s is very much different, including the rule set of modern basketball. When the age of LeBron and Jordan are much closer. Like, yes, the rules are much more consistent from Jordan to LeBron, but the meta has still evolved a lot in terms of like when Jordan reigned in the mid 90s and when LeBron's peak in terms of the mid 2010s and his time on the Heat, and then going to Cleveland, basketball still did change a lot from that. And nowadays, the meta of the NBA is hugely different from back then, with the 3-pointers and the corner shot, and in terms of what Steph Curry and the Warriors have done. So to me, basketball has changed. I think it's like a good example. You can make it about all of Counter-Strike. I know the games have changed. Obviously, 1.6
it's
to
tough.
Source to Go are vastly different games. I totally get that. But it's still Counter-Strike at the end of the day. And if you want to have fun with it, you talk about the GOAT of everything. You talk about all of the games. And that's
Well,
why I think, to me, right now, 1, 2, and 3 is Forest, Get Right, and Simple. I do have Forest and Get Right above. Well, I'm not totally sure about 2 and 3. I have Forest as number 1, and then I think Get Right and Simple. I think Simple can go above Get Right, but it is very close. I think Get Right and Forest is also very close, but Forest had a slightly higher 1.6 peak than Get Right, which is why I make him the GOAT. If Simple got more major championships in CSGO, then I think he would have to me, a closer time to Forrest in terms of overtaking Forrest. But because Simple did not win as many majors as, let's say, if Simple had the amount of majors that Device got, I think he would be ahead of Forrest in terms of the all-time GOAT conversation.
outside of
Wait, can we-
1.6, how many majors did the two people you listed have?
Well, there were no majors in 1.6.
Right. So how many?
wasn't
So
a
you
thing.
keep bringing up majors when you knock on Simple,
wait.
but
Total championships.
Wait. The thing is, like, we're also comparing right now, like Force and Get Right, when the amount of people that played back then and the size of the tournaments and how many people could like
that
actually make
counts
a
too.
career in them.
All of that counts. All of that counts. Same thing as
I
like
would
the NBA. The level of competition in the NBA is so much better now than it was in the 70s. Like, obviously, like the skill level and the amount of teams that are playing, all of that is so much. That's why modern sports athletes always get the benefit of the doubt in the GOAT conversation than old players most of the time. There's recency bias. There's competitive level of competition is higher. The leagues are bigger. It's harder to win. There's more stats now. There's a lot of reasons why modern players are always, usually named in the GOAT type of thing.
I feel like them being better then versus Simple being better now, I feel like Simple overshadows that. I can attest to like the longevity, the fact that they were able to be so good for so long in 1.6, come to CS:GO and fucking dominate the first few years, especially, was very impressive. But I feel like it was a completely different game, and being good at early days CS:GO and 1.6 compared to late stage CS:GO and where CS2 is right now is completely fucking different.
I think Simple would still be my goat above Forrest and Get Right, but that's because you're talking to somebody that doesn't have real perspective to the longevity of their careers. I know how dominant Get Right was, specifically Get Right, at the start of CS:GO. I'm well aware of that. I watched that, and I know Forrest his consistency in Go and for his longevity was what was so impressive. Important. But everything before that is so hard for me to value in this discussion. So it's for me, I'd just be making some shit up. If I go further down the rabbit hole, I'd just be making shit up. So I think Simple for me has to be the number one in that discussion.
I mean, a lot of it for me is too, I watched Forrest and Get Right win those 1.6 championships in front of me. Like watching their time in Fnatic and watching their time in SK was incredible. They were the players of 1.6. They were such incredible teammates together. They won so many international championships. And then the run that they went on with NIP to start the game, and obviously early CSGO competition is nowhere near the level of competition that CSGO was at the end of the life cycle of the game, or even in CS2 now. But because they were able to go on such a dominant run at the start, combined with their legacy of wins and consistency in 1.6, and just as you say, I'm not a Jordan guy over a LeBron guy, but watching LeBron at 40 years old still be the best player right now on Team USA means a lot. And although Forrest does not have a team currently, his longevity as a professional player absolutely is like embedded in terms of where he is ranked. He definitely gets points for me in terms of why he's number one because of his longevity. And as of now, yeah, I think Simple is hurt a little bit. I also think it doesn't help Simple that Navi is winning. Navi is winning. If Navi was not winning without him, I think this would be a much different conversation. But them winning the major, winning at EWC, almost winning Blast, really makes Simple look a little bit expendable. No? It almost feels like Wonderful is having a better time integrating into the team altogether. It's almost like, well, should we even bring back Simple? I mean, that's an absurd question, right? Like, if Simple wants to play, you would think Simple automatically has a spot back on the team.
I don't think he does.
But are we at the point where, like, maybe not?
Who are the next best after, like, Get Right and Forrest and, like, 1.6 and early CSGO?
Oh, 1.6?
1.6 in early Cisco, because you're bringing up like them.
Oh, it'd be like Neo, Neo, and 1.6.
Neo and Markaloff, and the Danes.
Zonic and shit.
Yeah, Zonic. Yes.
And Kerrigan.
No,
not Kerrigan.
Zonic. Yes. Zonic. Yes. I have Markaloff and Neo as after. I have Markaloff before Neo.
Yeah, because
Forrest, Get Right, Markaloff, Neo, and then.
I would be out of touch, but wasn't the main debate in 1.6 mostly between Forrest and Neo most of the time? I could be wrong, but I feel like that was like, it was always between those two, at least from my limited understanding.
Maybe Trace, I think Trace would be up there too. Like the Danes at the very end became, the Danes at the end of 1.6 should have showcased what they were going to be like at the Counter-Strike going forward. That's really when the Danish teams found their footing. It's Trace and that MTW squad.
So when we compare kind of like Simple, Get Right and Forrest to kind of their peers at the time versus Simple, in contention with Zywoo and Nico and Dupree and Magisk and whoever the fuck else is on Device and all these people that are on that list, and Coldzera and his prime and Fallen in his prime and all those people, what's kind of like more impressive, I guess, in terms of just individual skill, being able to take your team to whatever limits?
I think all of those things are like everything is included for me when I think about this. Like how many rings you got is definitely important.
I feel like it was more
better than Simple.
Well, Valve implementing the major system is a big difference from 1.6 because that wasn't around back then. So we in 1.6 we use like CPLs and WCGs and ESWCs to kind of, and then IEMs also. IEM Katowice back then too was a big world championship. We use those as like the biggest major championships. Now in CSGO, there's a dedicated system. It's much easier to track who's won the most majors. And the later majors in CSGO are more important than the NIP majors, right? I can admit that. The majors that Get Right and Forest won were easier, even though they went.
Well, they only won one.
Yes.
Dramatic winner 2013. Wait, no. It
No.
was before that.
It was later. They lost the first one to Fnatic, and then
true.
They lost the first one to Fnatic, and then they lost twice, and then I think they lost to the Frenchies.
Cologne 20.
And then they won. I think it was
Katowice at a VP.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's right.
Cologne.
I think it was
They
Cologne.
might have won Cologne. Yeah, because I remember I was like,
was
I think I was on the cast for the finals of that thing.
You were there.
Really, like the biggest issue for
I think it was
Simple,
there.
for the biggest problem for Simple and for Nico is their lack of major championships. Like they both of them at each
Nico
time
has none.
I know. Each of them at one time, especially Simple, were definitively the best player in the world, and they could not drag their teams over the line for a variety of reasons, whether it's no help or self-performance when it comes to like Nico's side, I would say, in terms of not being able to win the major championships. And that is where Device really excels because of the dominance of Astralis and that team and him being the best player on that team. That is why it's so close in Go for me, even though Simple is definitely the undisputed GOAT, but because of the lack of titles, Device gets kicked up there, I think, a good amount.
Using team success to value the individual level is a hard one for me to get behind.
You have to do both. You can't.
I know, but I don't weigh more.
And then your team doesn't win the championship.
Oh, I know. No, I know. There's
be the bus driver and the man if you do not bring your team.
No, absolutely. But I'm just saying, like, I think there's give and take, and I think I value the team aspects less when you're having this conversation. Not that I don't value it at all, or that you don't need a championship, or that you can't like have it held against you. But when I'm thinking of like best player, I'm thinking of best player. I'm not thinking of like, well, what act?
You the best player if your team doesn't win.
You can.
Doesn't matter.
You can. I've watched Nico do it a lot. Nico specifically, you mentioned his individual level. What you maybe forgot, or a lot of people forgot, is Nico 6 months going into that major was maybe the highest rifle ceiling we've ever seen in Counter-Strike history, and he literally missed one shot, and that's all people remember. But literally he dragged his team kicking and screaming into that fucking major final and was one shot away from winning the game, and was actually maybe the most dominant individual player I've ever seen. Yes. It was maybe the most dominant individual level I've ever seen in Counter-Strike. I know people think like Donk. No, he did it for 6 months, and he did it with a worse team, and it was way more impressive. So yeah, like I would put Nico higher, even though he doesn't have a major, because I value shit like that, because I watched it and I know it actually happened. Also, that's why I can't speak to some of the older like accolades and shit like that.
So another point is like, okay, so would you also rate an IGL? If they're winning, they're good IGL, and if they're losing, they're bad IGL.
Ooh.
Does it not matter like who's on their team? Like if I'm IGL of a team and I've got like 3 fucking insane players that could literally just 1v5, and I've got 3 of them, does that make me a better IGL than someone that's playing with 4 people that are playing blindfolded and with no hands?
I think IGLs are the worst to try to fucking look at from the outside looking in, but it's a valid
right?
point. Like you don't know.
Yeah, it's like we're trying to compare like these players and say like, oh, this player is better because he's won more tournaments. It's like, yeah, but like he might have also been on a better team.
No, that's what makes it fun. Like all that stuff is really important. How much help the GM got, it impacts how your legacy as a player. If your owner didn't get you the best teammates, then they screwed you over. But you have to, I mean, you can acknowledge that the GM and the owner did not get you the teammates that you needed to put you in the best position to win.
So then you'd say that player's worse?
Also look past that?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Is like you're kind of glossing over it.
Their GM kind of cucked them a little bit.
Right. Like, so that's it's very important. Like was Simple really hurting his legacy because he's got one major when he played the first half of it with fl0m, who's playing Grand Theft Auto to warm up before
Zeus.
he played with Zeus. Like, yeah, no, exactly. Like, and then funny enough, Zeus won the major because of the coach changes. But that's just too funny. But yeah, I just don't value it as highly as you do, I think. And that's because, like, kind of what Josh is saying, there's so many intangibles when it comes to the team aspect where you start bringing them into the conversation. It's not that they're not important, it's that context matters. And if you're going to recognize that context, which you should, yeah, I still think undeniably Simple can't actually really be touched all that much. Like, you could maybe say towards the end when Navi had that roster, could they have won a little bit more? Yeah, but they did get a Grand Slam. Don't forget that. And they got a major. So
true.
But there's always an asterisk with the Grand Slam, but that's not their fault. That was COVID. That's not, they can't do anything about that. And also, who's to say they don't win a major when we're missing them during the time that Navi's the strongest? So this is where context really comes into play there. Like, when it comes to, like, what, if you're bringing up Simple's, like, achievements, there's a lot of circumstances that outside of his control, I just feel like aren't, you can't hold them against him. You just can't.
I mean, that's what makes, to me, as a big sports guy, I love the GOAT thing. It's absurd. I know the GOAT discussion is absurd because you're arguing over many different eras. You have to argue team success versus player success. You have to look into account the stats, the changing of the landscape, the different competitive integrity. But that's what makes it fun. All right, we're never going to come to a conclusion.
No, I know.
But that's why, fanfic on your PC. Did you write a fanfic? You probably did.
Not yet. Maybe
he might. Baby. Oh my god! All right.
Is that why you want to get it right on this podcast so you can fucking, like, go back to his fanfic that he wrote later on?
Probably.
You know.
By the way, Chris, if you're listening, you can see with this debate who really has your back here. Okay.
He knows where I stand.
Really, your friend.
Yeah.
He knows I'm a shitty Source player. He flames me all the time. This man literally stays with me and gives me shit. It's crazy. Oh no! So he knows. He knows I don't know shit about 1.6. I knew it was between Neo and Forest, and I feel like,
Chris. Okay, I get you. I was there.